Thank you for joining everyone today. This is the TIP Updates webinar, and I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Erwin Gianchandani, the National Science Foundation's Assistant Director for Technology, Innovation, and Partnerships, the newly established TIP Directorate. So with that, Erwin, take it away.
All right, thanks very much, Angela, for that introduction, and good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you might be located. It's great to be with you today. I want to first start by thanking you all for taking the time to join us today. Really appreciate it. This is the next in a series of what we hope will be recurring, at least semi-annually, conversations that we have with the broader community, providing a sense of where things are with the TIP Directorate today and where we're hoping to go in the weeks and the months ahead as well. Since TIP is still relatively new at the National Science Foundation, we are going to spend the first bit of this webinar providing a little bit of background and context for why TIP and why now. Some of you may have heard this in our last webinar back in September, or you may have heard this in other forums that we've been talking about TIP in. And then we'll spend some time talking a little bit about some of the programmatics, including some of the new activities and updates to existing activities from when we last had this type of a forum back in September of last year. I also want to note at the outset, because sometimes when we get into the midst of a conversation such as this, it's easy to forget to acknowledge the folks who make this possible. So obviously folks like Angela and Ahmad on our side, Kelly and the rest of the communications team here in the TIP Directorate, but really the entire program officer and administrative team and contracting team that brings TIP together on a day-to-day basis, and that really runs the programs that I have the pleasure of talking about in a forum such as this. So my thanks and my gratitude to everyone in TIP. And if you're interested in joining us, we are recruiting, so I encourage you to please feel free to reach out as well. We're always looking for great talent to come join us in this endeavor that we are on as well. So let me, with that, dive in. So many of you know, but certainly not everyone on this webinar, about the National Science Foundation. The National Science Foundation was established back in 1950 as part of an organic act that Congress passed and the president signed into law at the time. And over the course of 7 decades, we have powered innovations through the research and workforce development and infrastructure that we've supported that have ranged from the foundations of the modern internet that we all have come to rely upon today, to the first image of a black hole, validating some of the theories in physics and beyond, to some of the rapid testing that came about as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and really helped to mitigate the impacts of the pandemic and helped us respond to the pandemic as well. And so much more over the course of those 7 decades on this slide and well beyond this slide as well. In that time, our mission as an agency has been to promote the progress of science, to advance the nation's health, prosperity, and welfare, and to secure the national defense. And I start with the mission because sometimes when we talk about something new, something different, there's a sense that, well, how does that tie back to the mission? And are we moving away from the mission, for example? And so I start with this mission with intentionality because, as I hope you will see over the course of this webinar, everything that we're talking about within the context of the TIP Directorate is really tied back to this mission statement for NSF going back over those 7 decades. As a matter of fact, our director, Dr. Sethuraman Panchanathan, who joined the foundation about almost 3 years ago now, came with this vision that was honed along with the rest of the NSF leadership team to really emphasize 3 strategic priorities for the foundation going forward. How do we strengthen the established NSF, the investments that NSF has made for decades in foundational research and workforce development that allow us to expand the frontiers of knowledge and discovery and innovation and technology? How do we inspire the missing millions? How do we take a very intentional approach to understanding what are the interventions that we need to take? What are the capacity building steps that we need to pursue that allow us to really seize upon the breadth and diversity of talent that exists all across this country and engage that talent in everything that NSF does and in the overall STEM innovation ecosystem? And then finally, accelerating technology and innovation, building together cross-cutting partnerships, cross-cutting programs that allow us to leverage some of that sort of curiosity-driven foundational research that we support to really mature use-inspired and use-inspired research, translational research as well, that allows us to be able to accelerate the impact of the work that we're trying to support out of NSF. And we do that. We achieve that set of priorities through our continued support for all areas of science and engineering, from the biological sciences to engineering to math and physical sciences to the social, behavioral, and economic sciences and everything in between as well. We also, in a range of our activities, try to engage internationally as well, partnering with colleagues in like-minded countries to help strengthen and scale the investments that we're able to pursue to bring shared expertise and resources to the table across this range of science and engineering areas that we support. Having said that, we would also argue that we are, much as was the case back in the 1940s when NSF was first being conceived and when Congress first enacted the agency, we are at the same time today also in the midst of sort of a defining moment, a changing landscape that's before us as well. And it's a defining moment in three critical ways. First, regardless of the technology area, whether it be artificial intelligence or advanced wireless technologies or other areas of investment, we face intense competition globally in these technology areas. And it's incumbent upon us to invest. It's incumbent upon us to invest and accelerate those investments to help drive forward progress in those areas with the values that have come to define the U.S. At the same time, we're facing intense socioeconomic challenges. I'll talk more about that in just a moment, but they're diverse, they're broad-ranging, and those socioeconomic challenges in some ways serve as drivers for some of the technological progress and innovation that we need to see have happen as well. And finally, you saw it on a previous slide in terms of one of the strategic areas of investment for NSF, but really trying to create pathways for anyone, anywhere to be able to engage in STEM, to be able to become a part of the STEM workforce at all levels. That's another area of intense interest as we think about how we want to shape our investments into the future. As a matter of fact, all of these areas are ones that align with not just NSF, but the administration and Congress as well, and the nation, but also they align with the National Science Board's Vision 2030 document that came out a few years ago, in which the National Science Board, the governing body for NSF, really articulated to a great extent sort of this changing landscape and the opportunity that it presented for us as well. And so in many ways, I think about some of those socioeconomic challenges that serve to drive technological innovation, technological development, everything from climate change to some of the inequities that have laid bare over the last several years when it comes to access to education and access to healthcare, access to basic information through broadband connectivity, and so on. And also some of the challenges that we face with critical and resilient infrastructure. Just as examples, these are just three examples of the breadth of socioeconomic challenges that we face that really make this a pivotal moment for our nation and for society writ large. And at the same time as we see sort of that changing landscape from a national, a societal, a geostrategic context, from a technological context, we also are watching how the science and engineering enterprise is changing before our very eyes as well. If you go back over the course of the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years, the pace of discovery in nearly every field of science and engineering, every sector of our society and our economy has dramatically accelerated as a result of access to data and emerging technologies. We're all talking about artificial intelligence and a variety of large language models today, for example, in ways that we have not talked about ever before. And it's contributing to new information, new discoveries, new innovations. It's also contributing to challenges that we need to understand, we need to reconcile, and we need to mitigate as we go forward as well. When we think about today's early career talent, some of our students coming into classrooms, coming into a variety of different settings, we're hearing from faculty, we're hearing from those very students that they are motivated and inspired to pursue science and engineering, specifically because they want to be able to make a positive impact on society and the economy. And in fact, I think that's partially driven anyway by what our young talent today saw in the context of the pandemic and some of the science and engineering that drove the vaccine development work that took place. And then finally, when we think about where that talent ends up, it's yes, in academia to some extent, in our institutions of higher education, but also in industry and nonprofits, in state and local and tribal governments and beyond. And so there's an opportunity for us to be strategic about trying to bring together diverse perspectives from those different sectors and backgrounds and really cultivate the blended teams through partnerships that allow us to have the right expertise at the table to frame problems and also bring about solutions to some of those challenges as well. And so when we think about that moment in time that we are in today, in many ways that suggests that there's an opportunity for us to really try to directly address that moment in time through what we're considering to be a new horizontal at NSF. So yes, absolutely today, the directorates, the units that we have at NSF, if you will, in biology and engineering and computer and information science and engineering, they are collaborating actively across the agency among one another. So they're by no means silent. At the same time, there's an opportunity for us to sort of strengthen and scale what we call use-inspired and translational research that's taking place to varying degrees across the directorates, but really try to take that to the next level through a cross-cutting horizontal that is the Directorate for Technology and Innovation and Partnerships. And in many ways, we see TIP partnering with all of the existing directorates and offices, the Office of Integrative Activities, the Office of International Science and Engineering on this slide, but at the same time also partnering with other agencies and other entities to build bridges between some of the work taking place within the foundation already, some of the new work that we hope to enable, and some of the opportunity spaces that we can certainly tap into as we go forward as well. And so that takes us to sort of the mission space for the TIP Directorate, which again, I juxtapose this in many ways with the mission for NSF that we shared a little while ago. So for those of you familiar with NSF, hopefully you'll see sort of a direct correlation to the original mission of NSF, not changing by any means. And for those of you new to NSF, hopefully also see how this plugs into the overall umbrella for the foundation. We want to harness the vast and diverse talent pool that exists all across the country. We want to advance critical and emerging technologies. We want to have those technologies help us address pressing societal and economic challenges by accelerating the translation of research results to practice. And along the way, we hope that this will help us accelerate ensuring that the U.S. remains, as the director of NSF likes to say, in the vanguard of competitiveness for decades to come. We grow the economy, we create opportunities for a diverse workforce for future high-wage, good quality jobs as we proceed. And so if you take nothing away from this webinar but one slide, I guess I'd submit this slide as something to sort of emphasize and to hopefully leave you with, which really tries to illustrate that lab to society spectrum. Oftentimes it's lab to market. We've broadened it because it's not just about market impacts and new startups and small businesses and so on, but it's really about societal impacts, economic impacts that we want to drive forward. And so this is bidirectional. We see research that is informed by societal needs. We see prototyping and piloting that takes place, lessons learned, and then repeating that process over again. And I think we're all familiar with the sort of proverbial valley of death that exists in between public funding that often goes toward foundational research, some to use-inspired research, and private funding that tends to focus on new products and solution development and so forth. And we really see TIP and our role in the ecosystem as trying to be able to build bridges between that sort of use-inspired research and moving forward all the way to translation to impact, with interventions along the way that allow us to be able to move that needle and have the impact in getting ideas from lab to society and inputs from society to drive some of the work that happens in the lab environment as well. And so to a large extent, for us, this is about trying to catalyze, I've called this before a paradigm shift. Some of you may notice a little bit of a subtle change here, but that's intentional because paradigm shift doesn't quite cover it. It's really more of a paradigm expansion moment for NSF, where our goal is to be able to say that a lot of what we've done is on the left-hand side of this slide over many decades, largely investigator-driven science, primarily academic research teams, And it's resulted in a steady stream of discoveries that we've been able to then push out to society and the market writ large, improved our quality of life, our prosperity, and so forth. But what we'd like to do more of is bring users, beneficiaries, consumers to the table to help shape the research agenda, to help us conduct that research by having practitioners work side by side, researchers and students as well, as part of multi-sector teams, and really putting the spotlight on the pressing societal, economic, technological challenges of our time to really drive the sort of research agenda that we want to help shape. So whereas a lot of what we've done is great new ideas, great new investigators and pushing out results to the market and society, we want to bring society to the table to help shape those opportunities and really demand pulling out the results then into the marketplace, into the future. So this paradigm expansion really is, it's not, these are broad brushstrokes. It's not that NSF has only done the left-hand side for 70 years, far from that, as a matter of fact, but this is an opportunity for us to really emphasize the right-hand side of this chart through the TIP Directorate and the TIP Directorate's contribution to the overall ecosystem as we proceed into the future. So hopefully that gives you a sense of sort of the context and the framing for why TIP and why now. I'm going to next spend some time talking about sort of the three key aspects of what TIP focuses on when it comes to building a portfolio of programs, a portfolio of investments that can allow us to be able to have impact in relation to that moment in time and that mission statement that I talked about earlier. So our core message at the end of the day, we want to advance U.S. competitiveness. We want to advance societal and economic impact. We want to do that by nurturing cross-sector partnerships that allow us to be able to drive and accelerate diverse innovation ecosystems, regionally diverse all across the country, for example, technology development and technology translation as well. How do we do that in a way that helps address some of those societal and economic challenges that I've talked about? And how do we nurture the next generation of talent or even the current generation of talent? How do we create opportunities for folks to potentially pivot into jobs of the future, high-tech, high-wage, good quality jobs of the future? And so these in many ways are sort of the three key thrusts, if you will, for the core message, what we're really trying to distill down TIP as being a focus area, a focal point for our directorate, but for NSF and for the nation's innovation ecosystem as well. So over the next few slides, I'm going to step through each one of these in turn and highlight a few of our programmatics and some of the updates, as well as some of the new things that we have done in these programmatics over the course of the last few months and as we look to the future as well. So first, in terms of diverse innovation ecosystems, we have sort of a portfolio of programs that we are trying to build out in this context when it comes to trying to really tap into talent, tap into regional creativity, regional challenges, regional innovation all across the country, and really trying to create this blend between societal and economic challenges and some of the technological development that we see as necessary to be able to enable that. The first is around the NSF Convergence Accelerator. So this is a program that we actually launched well before the establishment of TIP back in 2019. The goal being to try to bring together transdisciplinary teams across multiple disciplinary backgrounds and sectors to really put a spotlight on what are the innovative and sustainable solutions, often from a technology standpoint, to some of our pressing societal challenges. It's an opportunity that's available to academia, to industry, to state and local and tribal governmental organizations, to nonprofits. Any of those can potentially apply and be a part of a Convergence Accelerator team, a Convergence Accelerator project that we might fund. As a matter of fact, through the rest of this sequence of slides, as I talk about some of our investments through the TIP Directorate, you'll see us highlighting the different sectors for which a given opportunity may be available, who is eligible for a given funding opportunity. In the case of the Convergence Accelerator, it spans all of those sectors on the right-hand side. The Convergence Accelerator has sort of this two-phased co-opetition approach, if you will. So we try to focus in on specific topic areas, or tracks, we call them. We put a relatively large number of teams through a 9-month planning phase at a relatively modest amount of investment, $750,000 per project. And then we do sort of a winnowing to a smaller number of larger size projects, $5 million over a couple of years, phase 2, which we call implementation. The goal is to sort of understand what is it that we're going to prototype and pilot, and then let's try to do that implementation of that sustainable solution to address a societal or economic challenge in that particular area. And so over the course of the last several years, from 2019 onward, almost 5 years of effort now, we have funded almost a dozen or so tracks, research tracks, that range the gamut from open knowledge networks that help drive future AI systems, to new quantum technologies, to the networked blue economy, to opportunities for us to be able to enhance ways in which persons with disabilities can become engage with the rest of society in an equitable way. Our most recent tracks that we just announced a few weeks ago, with deadlines later this summer and into the fall, are around equitable water solutions, real-world chemical sensing, to be able to drive innovative applications, and bio-inspired design innovations as well. And most of these tracks, if not all of them, really emanate from the community, providing input on topic areas of convergence, topic areas of potential interest going forward. So that's on one end of the spectrum, investments at the level of $750K to $5 million or so. Another end of the spectrum is the NSF Regional Innovation Engines, or NSF Engines program. This one is really, as you can see, up to $160 million per project over an up to 10-year time horizon, with some planning awards that we call development grants, or development awards of $1 million for up to 2 years. This one's on the other end of the spectrum in terms of really trying to be able to bring together a broad and diverse coalition of individuals and organizations in a particular region around a particular topic of use-inspired research, to be able to help support that use-inspired innovation, translation, workforce development, and ultimately stimulate the creation of new jobs and new economic growth into the future. You can see we welcome proposals from that are led by organizations in all different sectors. As a matter of fact, we were really excited just a few weeks ago to be able to announce the first cohort of what we call Engines Development Awards. There were 44 of these that we funded, each about $1 million for up to 2 years of support. You can see that these Engines Development Awards are touching 46 states and territories across the United States. They range the gamut in terms of topic areas, from sustainable energy to advanced agriculture to bioeconomy and so forth. And they additionally also touch all of the key technology areas that are called out by Congress in the CHIPS and Science Act legislation, for those of you tracking that legislation very closely. These Engines Development Awards, in many ways, are now embarking on a journey to coalesce the partners, the topic area, the region of service, to essentially position themselves for a potential future NSF Engine Award a couple of years down the road. But in many ways, what we're excited about is the breadth of where these awards are located, the regionality dimension, the technical dimension that we're excited about as well. Really trying to put a spotlight on co-design and co-creation by bringing together folks from different sectors in a way that allows us to be able to really harness the geography and the demography of innovation in tackling some of our foremost challenges and advancing technologies along the way as well. And unlike some of our other programs at NSF, our main focus here is on what are the technological outputs and what are the workforce outputs that we hope to see emanating from these investments that we make. Now, one of the things that we have stressed with the Engines program is we want to create opportunities for diverse organizations to be able to participate. We want to create opportunities for those diverse organizations to be leading or actively engaging as part of the NSF engines that we hope to submit. As a matter of fact, back in the fall, we announced a program called Enhancing Partnerships to Increase Innovation Capacity, or EPIC, where the goal is to be able to provide training and networking support to individual institutions of higher education that allow them to be able to write proposals to NSF that are competitive for how they might go about doing capacity building and also building partnerships with engines that might be coming online within their respective regions. And we hope to make an investment this year on the order of $20 million across a number of 50 or so of these awards all across the country. And so in many ways, when we think about the engines program, there's the engines program, but then there's also thinking about if you have an engine that's coming together, what's the scaffolding that's necessary to be able to allow that engine to give rise to a regional innovation ecosystem. EPIC is one of those bits of scaffolding that allows for capacity building at diverse institution types and allows for those institutions to partner with engines to increase their innovation capacity. We also recognize that the engines are going to need support themselves in terms of how they build partnerships, in terms of how they share best practices, in terms of how they allow for knowledge exchange in specific topic areas as different topic areas take on different forms across different regions. And so the Builder platform that we announced at the end of last month allows us to be able to move in that direction by providing some of that scaffolding support. And as these engines grow and that innovation ecosystem grows over time, we also recognize that down the road there might be need for follow-on investment beyond NSF support of these engines in the form of a venture platform or something equivalent that we might have to provide into the future as well. So hopefully that gives you a sense of two very different, but related in the sense of the goal that they share around trying to be able to build diverse innovation ecosystems, two programs that we have that support that particular goal. I'm going to transition now to talking a little bit about our focus on technology areas specifically. The CHIPS and Science Act legislation calls out accelerating the translation of technologies to practice, to impact at the end of the day. And we have a suite of programs that really have been designed in the past and that we are designing now to be able to allow us to do that. Some of these programs focus specifically on technology translation with the technology area somewhat agnostic. And so, for instance, we have a suite of 3 programs that come together: ICOR, Partnerships for Innovation, and Small Business Innovation Research or Small Business Technology Transfer, that help researchers really try to do the feasibility assessment that they need to do of whether they can take their idea and how they can take their idea from lab to market. And this is specifically that market pathway when it comes to technology translation, understanding that there are other pathways as well that we want to be supporting through the TIP Directorate. So the ICOR program, which NSF stood up about a decade ago, available to the academic community. We have funded on the order of about 10 ICOR hubs and countless teams that go through the curriculum that those hubs offer. This is really about trying to be able to provide experiential entrepreneurial education that allows us to be able to take teams and have them do the initial customer discovery, the initial sort of market fitness to be able to assess, is there a market and what is the market for the concept that's bubbling out of a research lab environment. And you can see that there's an opportunity available right now for individual teams to submit proposals for funding to go through the ICOR program and the curriculum offering and that market fitness customer discovery work that I just talked about. Sort of a next step forward is the program Partnerships for Innovation. And these don't have to be done in sequence, but one way to think about it is PFI allows then for teams that maybe have done some of that initial market feasibility to now start to gain a little bit more of that market intelligence, a little bit more insight through the prototyping and piloting of their research output, specifically by doing some initial licensing with companies to be able to see if they can spur some university spinoffs from the work that's emanating from their work. And we have 2 phases or two elements to the PFI program: a focus around technology translation, focus on really building out research partnerships with support that emanates up to $1 million of support for up to 3 years. And then finally, SBIR STTR, sort of a flagship program that NSF actually helped establish. We piloted that back in the 1970s and 1980s, and now many agencies across the federal government have adopted this effort. to be able to, over multiple years, as you see on this chart, provide up to $2 million of support, R&D funding specifically for deep tech startups, to really be able to do that feasibility assessment on how we transform scientific and engineering discoveries into products and services with commercial and societal impact. One of the things that we are particularly excited about with SBIR, STTR at NSF and the way we implement this program doesn't take a lot of effort to engage. We have a short project pitch that we encourage folks to submit to get started and get very quick feedback from our program officers on the viability of that pitch. And secondly, we really focus in on the earliest stage ventures, the earliest stage startups and small businesses at NSF in terms of trying to be able to provide them with support to catalyze their activity and then go on and be the successes that we hope to give rise to, like Qualcomm, which itself was a SBIR, NSF-funded SBIR many, many years ago. So that's one lineage around technology translation that we're excited about, lab to market, and trying to innovate in that space, trying to build out these programs that we've had for a few years and now have an opportunity to scale even further with the establishment of TIP. Another lineage that we're thinking about is something that we call pathways to enable open source ecosystems, or POEs. Depending upon the topic area, for example, in the wireless space, in the ecology space, there may be opportunities for us to, rather than go down a commercialization path, to instead think about ways in which we can potentially cultivate an open source ecosystem that allows for continued innovation, developer contributions, potential spinoffs from there. And as a matter of fact, in certain trade spaces, as many of you know, we have seen that open source ecosystems can offer sort of a competitive advantage vis-a-vis some of the closed box approaches that others might take. And so in this particular context, much like SBIR, STTR, where there's a two-phased approach, there's a similar two-phased approach here that's open to academia, to industry, to nonprofits to engage with. We've just funded in the last year the first round of phase 1 awards, and we're getting ready here pretty soon to announce the first round of phase 2 awards, as well as we continue to try to build and scale this program. So just as we have lab to market and now sort of lab to open source ecosystems, we're looking to try to really build out the full complement of technology translation pathways as we look to the future with the portfolio around technology translation and the translational impact of NSF-funded research. A relatively new program that we have launched in the last few months is called Accelerating Research Translation. It's aligned with one of the requirements, one of the authorities that Congress gave NSF as part of the CHIPS and Science Act legislation. This one specifically to try to support institutions of higher education to build their capacity and infrastructure to strengthen and scale the translation of basic research outcomes into impactful solutions. The funding opportunity recently closed. We have proposals in from academic institutions, and we're in the process of reviewing them. The one thing that I'll highlight here is this sort of continues a theme that you've probably detected in the conversation this afternoon or this morning, which is around the focus of how do we build capacity? How do we build infrastructure to really allow us to scale the full breadth of innovation potential and engage the full breadth of talent in that innovation potential all across the country? So here with Art, what are those institutions of higher education that maybe have a strong foundational research background to build upon, but not necessarily the translational research capacity today, or the translational research capacity in specific areas of technology translation, like I alluded to with those different pathways a few minutes ago? We're also trying new things, pilots, if you will, along the way to sort of help us bring the technology translation pathway even earlier into the research equation. So a few months ago, we entered into an arrangement with an organization called Noble Reach Emerge, previously IQT or InQtel Emerge, where there are commercialization advisors. They have experience from work that they've done around how best to commercialize, how best to think about those pathways to societal impact. And so in this particular case, our directorate, the TIP Directorate, has partnered with the Biological Sciences Directorate here at NSF to specifically try to identify a set of biotech-related projects that we're already funding to be able to pinpoint what are specific lineages or what are specific pathways associated with the research that the researchers had proposed that may be more optimal for commercialization or for societal impact in the nearer term. And so this is an opportunity for us to really be able to try to accelerate that technology translation curve, if you will, from lab to market. And then finally, there's a series of activities that we have initiated over the last several months that are very seemingly focused. So you might think of these as sort of micro examples of investments that we have. One is around a prototype open knowledge network that derives from some of the work that was done by the Convergence Accelerator that I talked about a little bit ago. There are a couple of others that I'm going to highlight here. But really, these are around key technology focus areas and how do we harden and mature some initial research in those key technology focus areas, the very ones that are called out by Congress as part of the CHIPS and Science Act legislation. So here in this case, this is about how do we get to a prototype, scalable, cloud-based technical infrastructure that allows us to integrate knowledge and data that allows us to be able to get to meaningful insights in a number of different sectors. And this is an effort that's open to a variety of different sectors, but at the same time, also a collaboration between NSF as well as other agencies in the federal government that have equities in healthcare or space or climate change that are coming together with us to help support this initiative. Similarly, over the course of the last year, as part of another pilot effort, we at NSF have partnered with our colleagues at NIST, as well as at the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, as well as with the UK government to try to, through a series of prize challenges, harden privacy-enhancing technologies. We, NSF, have supported work over the years through other directorates around differential privacy or fully homomorphic encryption or secure multi-party computation. And yet some of those techniques have not really been brought to bear on some of the foundational data sets where there are opportunities for them to really have impact. And so are there ways in which we can bring together use cases with real-world data sets with some of these privacy-enhancing technologies to foster use-inspired and translational work that allows us to be able to accelerate the realization of those techniques in real-world practice. And then another example that I'll highlight is around this notion of learning technologies. And this is something that we were delighted to be able to do in collaboration with multiple foundations, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Schmidt Futures, and the Walton Family Foundation, to really be able to encourage interdisciplinary teams that had concepts that were maybe primed for startups or small businesses, but to be able to start to through a prize-based mechanism, again, a pilot effort here, through a prize-based mechanism, try to see if there might be ways to be able to accelerate the potential of the translation of those game-changing learning technologies into real-world applications and practical settings, including classroom settings across the country. And so this is a prize challenge that's currently in motion. A lot of interest from the academic community as well as industry and nonprofits, and really excited to see where this goes into the future. And finally, in this tranche of this talk, I want to highlight a program that's also cross-cutting that involves the TIP Directorate, but other directorates at NSF, computer science, engineering, math, and physical sciences, our STEM education directorate as well as collaborations with industry, Ericsson, IBM, Intel, Samsung, $50 million partnership in this fiscal year to be able to support research and workforce development on the future of semiconductors, the design and manufacturing of next generation semiconductor technologies. And in particular, an emphasis of this program as we think about technology development here is on co-design, bringing together material scientists, device engineers, architects, systems engineers together in a holistic end-to-end way to really envision that next generation of semiconductors as we look to the future. So hopefully that gives you a sense for not just the technology translation pathways that we're looking to support, be it lab to market or open source ecosystems or other forms that we will hopefully pursue down the road, but also our focus on specific technology areas as called out by the CHIPS and Science Act legislation. And in relation to that, TIP just put out a RFI, a request for information. Encourage all of you on the webinar to check out the website on this slide, and we will make make the slides available and post them publicly afterwards. But check out the link on this slide to access that RFI, where you can go and provide us with input on how you think we should be thinking about prioritizing and focusing TIP investments across key technology areas, as well as national, societal, geostrategic challenge areas, all of the areas that Congress has called out. How do we want to think about a roadmap of investments over the course of the next 3 years that build upon some of the seminal work that I've just talked about with privacy-enhancing technologies, learning technologies, and so on into the future. So that's a very quick deep dive into technology translation and development. And the last piece that I want to emphasize is around workforce development over the next few slides. And in particular, this is an area of particular interest to TIP. And one that we envision ourselves working collaboratively with the STEM Education Director here at NSF, with other directorates, but also other agencies, Department of Education, for example, and other agencies across the federal government. As we think about how can we meet people where they are, how can we really engage the full talent base, from technicians to practitioners to educators to entrepreneurs to researchers, to really support those myriad career pathways that can contribute to technology development, technology translation into the future. And so a couple of programs that I'll highlight here. One is Excellent, Experiential Learning for Emerging and Novel Technologies. We had one deadline this spring. We have another deadline coming up this fall, where the idea is to be able to support regionally distributed cohorts of students with anchor organizations that serve as the nexus between students and companies and governments and others, where there might be internship and apprenticeship opportunities. How do we provide that matchmaking between students? And when I say students, from K through gray, individuals who are in school today, or individuals who may be a part of the workforce today looking to do a pivot into a high-tech space like AI or semiconductors or wireless or quantum or biotechnology, and pursue a different kind of a job into the future for themselves. And so this is about how do we provide experiential opportunity through those internships and apprenticeships to talent that allows them to really be able to complement what they might get in a classroom setting through a degree or certificate program, and be on the pathway to engaging and having impact into the future. So here as well, NSF is very much interested in seeking input from the community, from you all, around what are the challenges? What are the opportunities? What are the avenues for us to really think differently when it comes to robust and engaging pathways for talent creation and continuous education into the future as well. And so there's another RFI that we have published. The link is there. I'd encourage you all to check that out and encourage you all to take the time to provide us with responses to this RFI, which will help us shape our portfolio as we look to the future. And then finally, just highlighting one more effort in the workforce development space. This is around entrepreneurial activity and sort of that entrepreneurial mindset. So in the last several months, we funded an organization called Activate to support a series of fellowships that provide individuals from a variety of backgrounds, from a variety of geographic locations, with the resources, with the connections to business and finance networks, with the lab space, to really be able to see how do you take a concept from the lab to the market. So think of this as sort of a follow-on to I-Corps, which I talked about earlier. But these 2 years of practical experience of how you go about doing this positions them to not only have success in going from lab to market, but also positions them to potentially being able to do this again in the future. Think sort of like a serial entrepreneur down the road. As a matter of fact, some of the work that we're trying to support here is not just at the PhD or post-PhD level, but really starting earlier at the undergraduate level or even earlier in terms of how can we think about both providing and honing and shaping and really taking that entrepreneurial mindset to the next level in every student in every part of the country all across the US. So hopefully that gives you a sense for how, through our investments in ecosystems, our investments in technology, translation, and development, our investments in workforce development, we are really trying to put a spotlight on ways in which we can accelerate research to impact at the end of the day through the TIP Directorate. And we've been hard at work, as I hope the previous slide deck has illustrated, from when TIP was first established in March of last year. Moving forward through partnerships that we have with industry, through partnerships that we have with foundations and nonprofits, through new programs, through new activities, through pilots that we have launched, through now awards that we're making through some of our activities, to really try to be able to, as the director here at NSF likes to say, create opportunities for everyone and really enable innovation anywhere and everywhere across the country as well. And again, on that previous slide, I'll just highlight, I get to talk about it, but there are so many folks who work often behind the scenes here at NSF and in the TIP Directorate to really be able to realize these efforts, these initiatives, and the impacts that we hope to have with these initiatives. And I certainly give the entire TIP team the world of credit in being able to get us to this point. So I hope that this gives you a very quick but broad-based overview of what we're trying to do with the TIP Directorate, how we see it really dovetailing with the rest of NSF, but also at the same time serving as a bridge for the rest of NSF and other constituencies, other folks with whom we can engage as we serve to try to advance technology, advance the impact of technology on society and the economy, and grow our workforce into the future. I'd encourage you to check out our website, new.nsf.gov/tip/latest. You can find funding opportunities there. You can sign up for our roughly quarterly newsletter, and you can also find out more information about webinars and other resources and events like this one for TIP as a whole, but also for specific programs and activities that we're looking to support. And finally, I'll just share 2 more slides. This one, just if you have not looked at the CHIPS and Science Act legislation, encourage you to take a look at it. There's a whole section, 20 or so pages, that speaks to the TIP Directorate and what Congress has authorized NSF to do with the TIP Directorate. You'll see that a number of the investments that I've talked about are investments that are called for in the CHIPS and Science Act legislation. We've either initiated them or we're in the process of making some initial forays and looking for resourcing to scale down the road. And then there are some that are on hold, looking to what happens with future year budgets as well. But really pleased to be able to make progress, not just on the ramping up slide, but also here illustrating some of the areas that we're touching relative to the authorization for the directorate. And then finally, in many ways, NSF is historically known for our engagement with academia. We will surely continue to engage with academia through TIP as well, but we're also looking to broaden the tent a bit and engage actively with industry, with other governments, with other government agencies, and also with nonprofits as well. And we invite you to find the funding opportunity that best aligns with your background and your perspective, and where you see you can make the impact when it comes to advancing the mission of TIP and NSF, but at the same time also advancing the nation's overall competitiveness and economic prospects into the future. So with that, I'll pause. Again, please feel free to reach out to me directly or to tip@nsf.gov. Visit our website for more information. And I think we have about 8 or 9 minutes here for some questions. So I'm going to pause and yield the floor over to Kelly, who's going to moderate our Q&A segment.
Hi, everyone, and thanks, Erwin. I'm Kelly Monteroso. I manage communications here in TIP. And we've got a lot of questions to get through in 10 minutes. So thank you, Erwin. I'm just going to kick it off and tell everybody that we are sharing our slides and we'll share the recording. It takes us about a week to generate everything and to get it out the door. So have a little patience with us, but we will share the deck and the recording. So you don't have to scribble everything down furiously. Okay, so the first question, Erwin, for you is how would you recommend giving feedback or sharing feedback about the request for information that we have out on the street right now?
Yeah, so thanks, Kelly. So yes, if you are interested in responding to the requests for information that are out there, if you have concepts that you believe could be useful for those requests for information, workforce solutions, for example, My advice would be to go to our website. You should from there be able to quickly get over to the RFIs themselves. And the RFIs have information in terms of whom to email or whom to send a letter to. And they also have very specific questions that we're looking to have answered. So I encourage you to check out the RFIs, read through them, read through the questions. You don't have to answer every question, but we encourage you to respond to the ones where you have particular passion or you have particular interest or equity. We will be reading those responses. And we will be trying to synthesize and aggregate those responses and use those to help us think through our next steps as well.
Okay, we had some eligibility questions for I-Corps. So who is eligible to apply for I-Corps and where does the funding go exactly?
Yeah, so there's a couple of forms of I-Corps that I'd emphasize. So one is I-Corps hubs. So the hubs are large efforts that typically involve multiple academic institutions coming together. We fund the hubs at a level of about $15 million per hub over a 5-year period, $3 million per year. We have funded 10 of those across the country and looking to grow that investment in the year ahead. So primarily academic institutions from across the country in response to those. With respect to the other track that we have for I-Corps, we call it I-Corps teams. So that's really about trying to bring together individual researchers together with entrepreneurs and so forth to really start to think about taking a concept from lab to market. So I'd encourage you to check out the I-Corps solicitation for very specific eligibility instructions and details. You can get that through our website as well.
Thank you. There have also been a lot of questions about the art program. And people are really curious about how many proposals we've received and any future opportunities like art that could be coming.
Yeah, so very fair, great questions. So I'm not going to comment on how many proposals we've received. We did get quite a number of proposals. We're excited about the response that we saw to the art program, both on the webinars and in terms of the proposals. It sounds like this is a program that is of deep interest to a cross-section of institutions and individuals across the country. So really excited about that. You'll see when we are ready to announce the awards, hopefully sometime later this fall, but our team is working furiously to try to get through those proposals as quickly as we can. In terms of future competitions, so we don't view this program as one and done. Matter of fact, on the contrary, a lot of what I've talked about, I think that a lot of what we've discussed requires sustained investment across multiple years to really be able to attain the kind of impact that we hope to have. So I'd encourage you to check out the art solicitation. I'd encourage you to stay tuned for more details about future deadlines for that program and for that competition, and likewise for our other programs as well.
Okay, another question. Someone's looking at the mission statement of TIP and NSF, and they see health and defense. Can you speak to how TIP or NSF differs from NIH and DoD?
Differs from NIH and DoD, sure. So, so a couple of points that I would make. So we are not a mission agency like NIH or HHS as a department or the Department of Defense. Our mission, if you will, is to be able to promote the progress of science, to advance the nation's health and prosperity, and to secure the national defense. What that means is we do that through our support of basic research across the full spectrum, from foundational to use-inspired to translational work as well. We certainly partner with other agencies that can help bring some of those use cases to bear to help inform some of the research that we support. So for example, we have active partnerships across NSF with NIH. We also have active partnerships with the Department of Defense, with the Office of the Undersecretary for Defense for Research and Engineering, also with DARPA and other offices and units within DoD as well. What I would say is that, we're not looking to tread on their mission spaces. NIH really focusing on medical disease, for example, and medicine and disease, trying to better understand disease and potential treatments for disease. But as an example, NSF and NIH have a shared interest in thinking about informatics and thinking about data and AI techniques that can allow us to better improve care delivery. to patients in the healthcare system all across the country. We have, not through TIP per se, but across NSF and NIH, a shared program that we jointly support in that space. So I think each agency has sort of its intellectual focus, if you will, that's consistent with its mission space. We certainly don't want to tread on their mission spaces, but we see tremendous opportunity for us to be able to collaborate, as some of their use cases can help motivate the R&D work that we try to support as well.
Thank you. There have been a couple questions about the best way to talk to someone one-on-one in TIP about where they fit best. Do you have any recommendations there?
Yeah, so a couple of things I would say about that. First of all, we are always happy to field questions at tip@nsf.gov. So you should feel free to reach out to that email alias, and we can try to redirect you to folks within TIP based off of hopefully a brief description that you can provide us of your interest or your area of focus and so forth. Having said that, I'd also encourage you to go to the TIP website on this slide, peruse the various programs that I've talked about, go through this slide deck, see where you see the greatest amount of alignment between what you're doing and one of our programs. So for example, let's say that you have an interest in quantum technology and you happen to notice that the Convergence Accelerator has a track focused on quantum technology. I think the deadlines for that track have passed, but nevertheless, you can reach out to a program officer listed on the Convergence Accelerator funding opportunity about your concept and see if they can provide you with insight or redirect you as appropriate, or give you feedback if that happens to be the right home for the concept that you have. So definitely encourage folks to take advantage of checking out our website and the information that we try to make available as transparently as we can on that website. Also encourage you to reach out to our email alias tip@nsf.gov for additional information. And stay tuned, because we may or may not have a program that directly aligns with your topic space today, but we may have one down the road, particularly as we get inputs through these RFIs. And so we encourage you to stay tuned to our newsletter and other sources of information as well.
Thank you, Erwin. There have been a couple more questions about the Excellent program and the tracks, and just digging in a little bit further about Excellent.
Right. So great question. So this is a program that we're super excited about in terms of the 3 tracks, if you will, that we have. So we've called them pivots, beginnings, and explorations that really are trying to be customized toward sort of different audiences or different profiles of individuals, depending upon what preparedness level or what readiness level or what engagement level one might have with a key technology area that's being supported by the internship or apprenticeship that the Excellent program is hoping to enable. So the pivots track is specifically focused on individuals who are not enrolled in an educational program today. Maybe they have some core competencies, but not necessarily in emerging technology area. And so the idea here is to see if there's a way in which the internship or apprenticeship can help them understand what AI means, or how they could contribute to AI, or what they could engage in when it comes to artificial intelligence, as an example, and then do a pivot into that space by pursuing further coursework, degree work, and so forth. The beginnings track might be someone who has some existing STEM competencies, but they could really benefit from experiential learning to really harden those and really understand with a deeper knowledge where they might be able to take those. So sort of a beginner trying to explore further. And then the explorations track is really about individuals who have limited or no specialized STEM education, but they are enrolled somewhere and they are interested potentially in exploring the potential of a career path in an emerging technology field. So we've tried to customize this program for sort of 3 different audiences, if you will, understanding that, we might not have gotten it all right on day 1, but I know that our program officer team really tried to sit down and think about how they might tailor each type of investment for a different audience.
Thank you. And we are at time. We have a lot of pending questions. I do recommend that people send their questions into tip@nsf.gov if we didn't get to them.
Yep.
And there was one last one about anything that's coming up with engines or any timeline that you could share. That's the last one.
Sure. So with the engines program, I would just say that we've announced the development awards, the planning grants at the beginning of this month. We believe we're still on track to be able to make the awards for the full engines by the end of this calendar year. That has always been our goal, and that is what our team is working really aggressively toward trying to achieve. So encourage folks to stay tuned. Would also encourage folks to keep an eye out for the Builder platform, dive a little bit deeper into that if you might be interested and believe you can provide some support for the teams that we are funding or will eventually fund. And then the EPIC program, the deadline, I believe, has just passed. And so we hope to be able to make those awards sometime later this summer.
Okay. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Erwin. And again, reach out to tip@nsf.gov with any pending questions.
Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, everyone.